Hello, and welcome to my NT Roadtrip 2021. In this amazing two-part series, join me on my great road trip, right from the tip-top of Australia, all the way down to its heart in the red centre. In this first part, I'm going to be focusing on my time in the top end. I'd arrived in Darwin on a muggy Thursday afternoon, and due to a minor mistake on my behalf, I had no car until the next day. I decided to head to the hostel anyway, only to find out that I was unable to check in. So I left my bags in one of the storage lockers and set out exploring the city. Through the initially unbearable humidity, I found myself a small war memorial by the water, where I got my first taste of the bugs which the top end offered. I soon headed back to the hostel and got acquainted with the residents there rather quickly.
Am I ever gonna see your face again? No, wait, get fuck off! Ever gonna see your face again? No, wait, get fuck off!
The following morning, I was up bright and early and headed straight back to the airport to go pick up my car. This was when the real trip began. I'm going to say this now, having access to my own car is really what made this trip amazing. My first stop was the Darwin Botanical Gardens. Ignoring the excessive amount of sweat dripping off my body, these gardens were absolutely beautiful and so relaxing to walk around in while it wasn't too hot. After the gardens, I planned to visit the nearby museum, not taking into account that it was actually Good Friday and everything was closed. I decided to take a quick dip in the nearby ocean and had to rethink my whole afternoon. I returned to the hostel and asked if anybody knew of something to do. Danny, yes, that's Danny, nominated a place called Berry Springs, just outside of Darwin. I had no better ideas, so off we went. It was a pleasant drive, and it was interesting to hear about Danny and her life in Darwin and Alice Springs. Berry Springs, however, was a decent enough national park which was known for its swimming spots. Being so soon after the wet season, most of these spots were closed due to flooding and crocs. This did not stop Danny from getting into the water, and I, for some reason, decided to follow suit. I would not recommend trying that at home. That afternoon, I visited the Charles Darwin Lookout and found this cool bunker turned into a mini museum. Despite the whole city being closed throughout the day, Darwin's nightlife did not stop for public holidays.
Leaving the Wisdom Club. I'm soaked. Head to toe, I'm drenched in sweat and alcohol. I'm getting one of these scooters because it's my last chance to do it, and I'm gonna try it.
So Darwin is littered with these orange Neuron solar-powered scooters, which the locals use to get around, especially after a night out.
Couldn't film it. It was too difficult. I nearly died filming it, but would recommend.
I was only planning to stay 2 nights in Darwin, but I was having such a good time. I wanted to stay longer. Plus, most things were going to be open in the city the next day, so I was able to really enjoy everything the capital had to offer. Firstly, I had a nice breakfast at the waterfront and visited the World War II oil tunnels. During World War II, Darwin was particularly vulnerable to attack from the Japanese, and in fact had been bombed twice. These huge oil tunnels were commissioned to be built under the city to store and protect fuel for the fleets. While the tunnels were only useful for the final stint of the war, it was still an awesome experience to walk through them and learn about some of the history. Next, I visited the Museum and Art Gallery of the Northern Territory, which I found all locked up the day before. I was absolutely engrossed by the whole display and so grateful I was able to see it all. The receptionist said to allow 2 hours to see the whole museum, and well, in the end I spent nearly 4 hours there. Inside was beautiful Aboriginal art, the best Year 12 major works, a whole section dedicated to Cyclone Tracy, a bunch of dead animals, heaps of artifacts from the territory's history, and a bunch of boats. On top of all of this, it was free entry. My final stop for the day was the War Museum. I was worried I may have started to museum myself out, for lack of a better term. However, I was really glad I went. As I said before, Darwin was on the front line during World War II, and that legacy still stands today. The War Museum is the ultimate tribute to this part of their history. Inside, you were greeted by an incredibly animated video depicting the Darwin bombings.
Sir, message coming through from Melbourne. Huge flood of bombers overhead, bound for Darwin.
Nah, it's probably nothing. It's just the Yanks coming back.
In the main courtyard, there were plenty of weapons and relics. There was also this giant gun. My favourite part was the various voiced testimonies from people who were alive during the war.
I was completely taken aback. I rushed into the office where I'd always kept my first aid kit and my tin helmet, and I rushed out of the office and over the road. As I rushed over the road, a bomb dropped on the roadway.
With all the history that I learnt that day, the most striking fact for me was the Darwin that I was seeing was actually the third rendition. The first was destroyed during the Second World War, and then the second was destroyed by Cyclone Tracy.
Last night in Darwin town. Woo!
The sheep button.
Let's do it again. Give me a home among the gum trees, with lots of plum trees. You took a look and give me a praise right out the back, bring her out the front, and more rocking chair.
Alright, finished in Darwin, heading off, leaving the big city. First stop, Litchfield National Park, 2 nights, camping in the car, gonna be great. Hit the road now. Goodbye, Darwin.
On On the 2-hour drive to Litchfield, I stopped at a little town called Bachelor and visited their local museum. It was run by a volunteer named Kim, who was very helpful in planning my journey.
So I was just talking to Kim over at the museum. Apparently this castle was built by a Czechoslovakian miner who came to Bachelor, and he was feeling a bit homesick. And so in his free time, got together some materials and built this mini Czechoslovakian castle in the middle of the Northern Territory. And it stands out like a bloody blue sore thumb. Look at it, it's bloody huge.
It's at this point in the trip, past Cameron started to vlog properly, giving us more first-hand accounts. The drive to Litchfield was quick, however, I didn't really have much of a plan when I arrived. My itinerary simply said, explore National Park. So I did. I first encountered the giant termite mounds, which were a bit meh, but as I continued, I found the first swimming pot, Bewley Rockhole. While it was quite spectacular, the sheer amount of people there was repulsive. Nonetheless, I still got in the water and had a good time. As I continued down the road, I encountered Florence Falls. I didn't know it at the time, but this would become one of my favourite places in the whole trip. My irrational fear of tourists had begun to kick in again upon arrival at Florence Falls. However, as the pool was a bit larger, it wasn't as scary.
Florence Falls, amazing place. I was on top of the cliff thing and I got up there and I was petrified. I thought I could do it. Got up there, no way. Everybody in the entire pond pool was like cheering me to go. Couldn't do it. And man, God was with me and I just jumped and I did it. And I feel amazing, on top of the world.
Sadly, I did not record this jump. However, I make up for that later on. My next stop was the breathtaking Tolma Falls. My video is unable to do this waterfall the justice it deserves. When you're standing on top of this cliff, the scale is just stunning. I now had to find somewhere to sleep for the night. I knew I was going to sleep in the car, however, I wasn't too sure how busy the campsites were going to be. There were two places to camp in Litchfield. You have Florence Falls or Wangi Falls. I was much closer to Wangi Falls, so I opted to stay there despite hearing that the campgrounds there were full. As I approached the marvellous waterfalls, I turned to the campground only to find out that the whole place was empty except for two spots. My guess is that people had cleared out after the Easter long weekend and headed home.
I am here at Wangi Falls and I was under the influence this camping ground would be busy. There are 3 campsites occupied and I'm one of them. So it's a bloody lonely place, this one, but it's too dangerous to head back to Florence. It's getting dark and I'm hungry, so I'm just going to make the most of it. And, this is pretty cool, these waterfalls. I'll probably come back in the morning, have a look at them. There's already a place I know that I want to go for a walk in the morning, so I'm just going to try and make the most of what I got available.
I set up in campsite 22 as it's my lucky number and found some friendly Sydney-siders to have my Easter Sunday dinner with.
It's like 8 o'clock at night. I'm trying to send a message home. Oh, I think it has actually sent. And this is where I'm saying I currently have the aircon blasting to cool it down inside. But there is nobody here. Nobody here. It's just pitch black. Fuck. I'm a little bit scared, I'm going to be honest, but this is where I am. There's a lovely couple from Sydney who I had dinner with and they kept me company. And so the fact that I know they're here makes me feel safe, but still, it's spooky. It's very spooky. Welcome to my hotel room for the night. That's where I'm going to be sleeping. Door's well and truly locked, I hope. I've got very good air conditioning going to try and cool it down. I can't have it running all night, but if it gets really hot, I can turn it on. but I think I'm going to have an okay night of sleep. So I've woken up here at Wangi Falls in Litchfield National Park. It was an interesting night's sleep in the car. I woke up maybe 2 or 3 times, blasted the aircon for about 5 minutes, and that really helped. But I'm here at the top of the falls. I have the whole day to explore Litchfield National Park, and I've already done Florence Falls yesterday. There's so many more things that I want to see and do here. Amazing place. I would recommend it.
After watching the sunrise at Wangi Falls, I had a simple breakfast with some friends and headed to the next stop, Green Ant Creek. It was a decent uphill walk to Green Ant Creek, but that was not the issue, nor was the temperature. Turns out I was the first person to walk the track that day, and the whole thing was covered in giant white light spiders. They keep coming across these massive spiders who have their webs across the path. I think I'm the first person to walk this today, and I have to keep throwing sticks at them to knock them down, just so I don't miss one, eh? When I reached the swimming spot, I obviously had it all to myself, and this lasted about 20 or 25 minutes. After about an hour, too many people had arrived and my tourist phobia had kicked in. Next on my list was the Cascades. Now look, the Cascades are not a bad swimming spot by any standards, but compared to some of the other places I'd seen, it just did not compare. I'm currently on the Cascade track. I'm about halfway, and oh my god, I just got reception for the first time in like 2 days. It is like the hottest walk I've done here. It's so hot as well, it's about 36 degrees in the middle of the day. Definitely didn't plan this one good. It did not help that I chose possibly the worst time of the day to do a walk that had minimal shade. Still, I made the most of this opportunity and enjoyed my peanut butter and Vita-Wheat lunch. After the grueling, fly-ridden, dehydrated trek back to the car after the Cascades, I still had plenty of time in my day. There was actually a walk that I skipped at Tolma Falls, so I headed back there and thought maybe I could stay and watch the sunset. I've come back to the Tolma Falls. I was hoping to watch the sunset here, however, the sunset isn't in the direction I thought it was. I thought that would be west, however, that is west. So I'm going to go back to Wangi Falls to watch the sunset, which I'm pretty certain is west. I don't really know why it felt like such a long day. It's just been so hot. It's been so hot. And I guess I haven't had anywhere to rest except my car the whole day, which is starting to take a toll, I guess. No building to go back to or anything. There's nothing here. Nothing. There was a cafe that was open around lunchtime and that was it. And I was nowhere near there for then. Yeah, Litchfield's been really good though. Really, really good. Would recommend Litchfield to anyone. Look at that amazing waterfall. Gotta come see it. I quickly realised there was a race against time to get back to Wangi Falls. Not only did I have to drive there, I also had to climb the damn thing and get to the viewing bridge. I surprisingly made it with plenty of time to spare. I have come all this way, back to the top of this waterfall where I was this morning. I watched the sunrise from over there, and I've come all the way full circle to watch the sunset, and it is dead center in this bridge. I'm going to wait about half an hour and it should start to look beautiful. On this bridge, watching the day's end, something truly remarkable was beginning to happen. The flies, who had been right arseholes the whole day, providing nothing but sheer irritation, decided to sit and watch the sunset with me. Well over 20 flies were sat on the wire keeping me company while we admired the view. This little fella in particular was in a perfect spot for a great photo. Last day at Litchfield National Park. I've come to Wangi Waterfalls where I slept
I've just missed the orange sunrise again by like 10 minutes, but it's still very beautiful. I'm gonna have one more swim at Florence, which is also doubling as my shower, and then hitting the road to Catherine. So I've enjoyed this place a lot. It's been really good. I can see nobody down there at all. There's nobody. I'm gonna have it all to myself.
I made it to Florence Falls at about 7 AM, and this was an absolute highlight of my trip.
Not a single soul here. Unlike the other day, where there was probably 50-ish people here. Empty. All mine.
The sound of the water crashing on the rocks. The water cooling my aching legs. Fish confident enough to swim around me. And absolute peace and solitude. And I told you I'd make it up for not filming my first jump.
Goodbye, Litchfield.
As I've been editing this video, I found it hard to demonstrate how awesome and enjoyable my time in Litchfield actually was. It was a real test for my endurance and challenged my ability as a young solo traveller. While overlooked by many tourists to the top end, this national park has certainly earned a special place in my memories. Next stop, Catherine. On the 3-hour drive to Catherine, I visited the township of Adelaide River. Adelaide River was where the Darwinites evacuated to during the war, and it acted as a military staging post.
This little monument here is dedicated to the post office staff who lost their lives during the Darwin bombing. This name here, Iris Bold, she had a whole bunch of sources from her and people who knew her at, I believe it was the War Museum in Darwin. And so it's actually pretty remarkable to see something dedicated to her so far away from where she actually died.
I paid my respects at the War Memorial here and got slightly distracted by this funky bridge. So here is Adelaide River. I could go on the big bridge there. There's a nice bridge there, but I want to go on the little one so I can see the river. Here you go. That's what the township's built around. Looks like Percy from Thomas and the Tank Engine. Just like Percy. There was also a really cursed railway museum with lots of these creepy dolls, which made me feel very uncomfortable. Overall, the drive to Catherine was a pleasant one, until...
So I've just arrived at Catherine, and about 1k out, I was apparently doing 119 in a 110 zone, and I passed a police officer. And so they pulled me up, but I only got a warning, which is good. I think it was only 9k's over. And the speed limit just changed from 130 down to 110. But yeah, still got to be really careful. So I'm now in Catherine. I have no idea where I'm staying. So that's my next mission, to try and find somewhere I can stay tonight, because I'm not sure at the moment.
I eventually found a very overpriced motel, but honestly, I was craving a solid shower at this point, so I just copped it. I still had some energy left in me to explore Catherine. Google Maps, the beautiful thing that it is, led me to a local gallery which showcased contemporary Aboriginal art. This museum was also free entry, so I decided to buy this hat to support the establishment.
This gallery was amazing. I can't pronounce the name, but I put the name. Amazing. Free, such good artwork, beautiful staff. Recommend. Catherine.
Frankly, the town of Catherine has zero nightlife, so I rocked up to the RSL, had a schnitty, and called it a day. I knew I was going to need a good night of rest. This day was going to be one of the longest stints of the trip as I headed south. My first stop was Nipmuc National Park, where I saw the stunning Catherine Gorge. I booked myself on a boat tour, and while I waited for it to start, I met some Adelaideans who had just come up from the places I was about to visit. While tours like this are pretty touristy, I did end up really enjoying it. Nipmuc had one of my favourite dreaming stories. It goes like this. Nabil, a raven-like figure who'd come from the west, carried water under his arm in a dilly bag. All the other animals tried to steal Nabil's water as the place was very dry and they were thirsty, but Nabil was too clever for them all. While Nabil slept, however, the animals pierced his dilly bag and the water which flowed filled up the gorge. Some would say this place is absolutely gorgeous.
Just had a lightning tour of Nipmuc. Got to see the gorge, went down on a boat. Very pretty, very breathtaking. Saw where season 1 of The Amazing Race finished, which was pretty interesting, I suppose. So it's about 12 o'clock and I'm now about to embark on a 6-hour drive, quite frankly, to the middle of nowhere in Banka, which is somewhere between Catherine and Tennant Creek. So I hope I can get there before it gets dark, and that's where I'm going to be spending the night on the way to Alice. So goodbye, Catherine.
The Stuart Highway is probably one of the most liberating roads in Australia one can drive. Dead straights which last at least an hour, with a juicy 130 km/h speed limit, which I may or may not have adhered to. On the road, I encountered the small town of Daly Waters, which was known for its infamous pub where people leave all sorts of crap as tokens. I decided to donate my university ID to the collection. As I continued further south, the terrain was beginning to change, and certainly getting much flatter. At one point, I was starting to lose hope of actually reaching Banka as I was filling up the car, watching the sun get lower and lower and lower. I did make it safely to Banka, and I began to set up home as the day was drawing to a close.
I've made it to Banka just in time to watch the sunset. Beautiful little place here. Lovely working station. Literally in the middle of nowhere, I can tell you that. Got a pie for dinner. Whatever else I've got left in my supplies bag. They've got hot showers, fresh water, pub. So I'm glad I pushed through to get here, even though it was tight. But it's going to be a good night, and hopefully have a good rest and set up in the morning.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 of my NT road trip. In this part, I visited the major city of Darwin, the beautiful national parks of Litchfield and Nipmuc, and I began my great journey down south on the Stuart Highway. Look forward to next time when I finally reach the Red Centre. Thanks for watching.
Everybody's starting to go to bed, but I've just come out here next to the fire to look at the stars, and this camera can't see it at all, but it's pretty spectacular. Like, I can see the Milky Way so clearly. It's absolutely amazing. So many stars, so many stars. In fact, the other night at Litchfield, I woke up at about 3 a.m. and saw all the stars, but I was way too sleepy to actually acknowledge it and get up and look at them properly. So I'm glad I get to enjoy it a bit more tonight.